pathway to enlightenment starts with an unfettered, focused mind. Look out! What are you doing?
Oh, I thought that dot on your head was from a sniper rifle.
Peter, this spot is a sacred adornment. It's a portal, an opening through which all light, goodness, rejuvenation, joy, and ecstasy may enter the human form.
A vagina?
Get out.
Okay, another video. This one, I think the title is going to be something like why it is impossible to grasp or understand the absolute. So, if you haven't already, as I say many times, if you're new to my channel, I'd recommend you watch my first 3 videos. They're quite long, but it's worth it. Those are my core videos that everything else builds on top of. If you don't understand those, you're not going to understand anything else I say, really. However, in those videos and in my other videos, like for example, self-realization is the end of progression. Like quite a few of my videos, because all of my videos kind of have that core of the absolute. But in all of my videos, basically everything, I'm always explaining what the absolute is, even though it can't really be explained. And as I've said many times, all that is, the absolute is just that the absolute is absolute. The truth is true, absolutely, which means that that's everything that there is. That's all it is, and that's all it ever could be. And there's no opposite. There's no other way it could be. So when I'm saying the truth is true, I'm not saying the truth is true, but it could be false. Like that's already relative truth and relative falsehood. But the absolute encapsulates both relative truth and relative falsehood. And the absolute, there's no opposite to that. And it's very simple. I am myself. The truth is true. Reality is real. Existence exists, as I've said many times. However, because that's a circular, because it's like circular, and I've explained in my past videos why some scientific logical people would say that's like invalid because it's circular logic and it's just self-justifying, so on and so forth. And I understand why you would say that. Because yes, as I say, in the relative plane, which is where we live, which is where all these people are operating from their egos, everything is by like opposites, everything is by contrast. So if you say the truth is true, and that's why everything is defined by what it's not, as I've explained like a million times in all those core videos, as I say, go back and watch them. But like, for example, this is a white PlayStation 5 controller. This is a black phone. You know what I'm saying? Like, the white, like what this is, when you say this is white, is defined by its opposition against black. And what this blackness is defined by the opposition against white. So everything is defined by what it isn't. Like this white controller isn't a black controller. It isn't a human. It isn't this. It isn't. In fact, there's 99.999% of reality. That's why I said everything is just an exclusion, because it's all the uniform field, which is everything. And that's why every single time you just create through boundaries, it's like it's like, imagine this whole field is like the whole absolute. And then you can only create by creating a boundary. See what I'm saying? And then you see like that circle, let's say that's me, a human. See how much now the rest of the field is all other. And then I'm looking out and then I think that's other, like that's the existence. Like, and then you can say, and then there's like another form here. And then you can say, this represents this white controller. And then this, like that represents this phone. And then you see like how this is defined, like, see, what basically makes this boundary, like what makes this is basically everything that it isn't, like on the outside, if you get what I'm saying. And what makes this is what everything it isn't, in reference to what everything that it isn't. So for example, even if you say, I am tall, you're saying I am taller than most people. So we shorten these sentences because as I explained, I don't know which video it was, but it's see, a lot of these sentences have like inbuilt connotations to where you don't really have to say it. Like if you're saying, I am tall, most people, the collective consciousness are going to fill in the blank. I am tall, like taller than most people, if you get what I'm saying. They kind of know that. But then, see, really there's not such a thing as absolutely tall or absolutely short. Because I could say I'm taller than the average person, but then I'm short in compared to someone else who's taller than me. But yeah, so I was just basically reiterating what I've explained in my past, how in the relative plane, everything is defined by what it isn't. And I've explained many times how, like, for example, if you was to say, what is this? Like, it's a phone, and then, like, explain how it came here, what it is. You're going to explain it with everything that isn't it. Like, you're going to say plastic and, like, metal, polymers, and it arranged it in this way, and all those words, metal, plastic, they're all not that. You know what I'm saying? So you can only explain something with other words which are not it. And that's why even if you look at definitions of language, like, language is so bad, because if you look at definitions of something, like, what does magnificent mean? Then you're going to get other words which basically roughly mean the same thing, which are just going to point to that. Or what you're going to get is a lot of synonyms which are similar but not that. Like, it's similar to that word, not quite that. So then you'll start to get the kind of general hue or idea of what it's like saying. Because you're saying, it's similar to all these words. What all these words have in common, all right, cool. That's what that thing kind of is indicating. And then you also get antonyms. I think it's called antonyms, like where it's the opposite of synonyms. Where you'll get words which are the completely opposite of that. And then you can say, so like say magnifico, and then antonym is terrible. Or like, or you know what I'm saying? Like, so, and then you'll say, cool. The opposite of terrible. You can only understand what this is by seeing, like, what it's not, and comparing and contrasting. See, but that's all in the relative plane of opposites. But the absolute is absolute. So there's nothing opposite to that. So in a sense, it's impossible to grasp, because you have like, there's no reference for it, because there's nothing other than it either. Like, everything you say is it. And let me just kind of bring it back to one now. So, as I said, the absolute truth is very simple. The truth is true, full stop. I'm not saying the truth is true that it's big, or the truth is true that it's small, or that it exists, or that it doesn't exist, or that it's good, or that it's bad. No, none of those things. That's already in the relative plane particularity. I've explained how the relative plane, like, is in a sense particularity, and the absolute is uniformity, formlessness. The relative plane is forms, the absolute is formless. So the truth is true, full stop. And that's what people don't understand, because it's basically circular, and you're saying the truth is true. Well, like, I am myself. Like, if I say that to a normal person, they'll understand. They'll say, yeah, like, the truth is true. Like, I am myself. Yeah, cool. But, like, what are you saying, though? The truth is true. But, like, so what is the truth then? Like, yes, the truth is true. But what, like, is true? But the truth is true that what? Well, like, I am myself. But then, like, what is that self that you're speaking about? See, and then because you want to explain it with something else that's not it. But you can't do that, because the absolute is absolute. So the problem is, right, that, for example, like, if I say this phone is this phone, you agree with that. But then when I say that the phone is the phone, you still think, like, in the background, you have the idea phone. Like, in your brain, you have, like, idea phone, but then you also have, like, all right, cool, phone, which is made out of, like, atoms, which is made out of, like, made out of plastic and metal, which is made out of atoms, which is, like, something you use to communicate, and da-da-da-da. So basically, and it was created by humans through time. Like, it was created, and it can be used, and so on and so forth. So basically, you would agree that this is a phone, but what your definition for what a phone is isn't a phone. As I said, you explain it with everything that it isn't, and you would accept that it's a phone, but then you would think that this is its own, like, boundary, and that it was actually, like, it was something that didn't exist before, and now it exists, and it was created through a process, like, by humans in a factory or whatever process. Or, like, this human. Like, if I say humans are human, humans are human, you would say yes. But then, like, if I say if humans are human, full stop, like, see, you don't know what to do with that, because if I'm saying, like, when I'm saying humans are human, I'm not saying, like, I'm saying humans are human, but I'm not even saying, like, that humans like I'm saying humans are human, but I'm not saying that humans are human and then like all the connotations that you have added on to whatever you kind of consider a human to be. So like when you hear me say a human is human, you're gonna think, yes, a human is human, which means like biological, like sentient being, but like like you know what I'm saying, like which is like, yeah, it's a biological being which was born, which is like made out of like matter or like carbon, you know what I'm saying, and that like two other humans had sex and created you, and then human, part of the human race, you know what I'm saying, on Earth, like so on and so forth. See, so you have all these other like connotations added onto that, which give context. See, that's really what's missing. Basically, what I'm saying, yeah, like when I'm going to the absolute, it's basically like I'm agreeing with like the content, but I've completely stripped the context, or I've given you pure context with no content, and your mind, it needs both. It always needs like context to explain the content. So when I say yes, a phone is a phone, you're gonna say yes, we agreed on that's the content. But then you're gonna say, all right, cool. But then what you think I mean by when I say phone, as I said, the map is not the territory, but as soon as I say the label phone, your brain already has loads of connotations of what that means. I remember, as I said, with the definitions, and if you go on Google and you type what's magnificent, you're going to get things which are like similar to magnificent, things which are opposite, and then you're going to use all those things as reference to give your brain context to be able to fill in the blank of what the content is. But I'm taking away all the context. I'm saying there's only context, just this. The phone is the phone. Not plastic, not like metal. It wasn't created by humans. It wasn't created in a factory. But it's still, the phone is a phone. Like, human is a human. When I say that, I'm not saying, oh yes, human is a human, which means a human is a biological being, which is sentient, which was born, which has consciousness, which can think, which can communicate. Like, no, none of those. I'm not saying any of those things. Human is human. Full stop. No context. See, because there, like, in a sense, you can say there's only context or only content, but there's no context. Like, your brain needs the content and the context. It needs the context to explain how the content got there, if you get what I'm saying. Like, you need the backstory to explain how this human became a human. Or like what a human means. Like, when you say a human, like, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. That's what I'm saying. It's circular. And then you say, oh, so it's meaningless, so it's invalid. No. It's meaningless. It's not invalid. It's not untrue. It's true. It's true. But it's still meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. See, truth is true, full stop. As I kind of explained in just my past video, I haven't even released that, but I literally just recorded it 10 minutes ago. I was kind of explaining with meaning, how meaning's secondary in there. I'll probably upload that one first. But that's basically, as I explained in that video, all meaning is secondary and it's made in the mind. And your mind needs meaning. It needs meaning to operate. See, because like meaning is basically always your deduction. It's your conclusion. Like, for example, you say, like A, you can say like A plus B is equal to C, which means D. Do you understand? Or you could say A means B. Like, it could be two different words, like excellent and magnificent. They basically mean the same thing. So you could say excellent is equal to magnificent. Like, magnificent means excellent. It's basically a synonym, so to speak. But then see, you only know, like, even that statement, you only know what that state, if I say excellent means magnificent, that whole sentence, that only means something to you if you know what excellent means first. Because if you don't even understand excellent, you're not going to understand what magnificence is by saying that magnificent is the same as excellent. If you don't even know what excellent is, then you're not going to understand what magnificent is. If you don't understand magnificent and you don't understand excellent, like, I would have to give you another synonym that you already understand, and you say, oh, magnificent is the same as that. So it's basically like to say, oh, I understand now. See, that's the context, which is explaining the content. See, so, like, the mind needs meaning, because meaning is like your deduction. It's like you do the experiment or whatever, which is life, then you get the result, and then the result, you make a conclusion about that. You say, oh, so A plus B is the experiment, which is equal to C, which is the results, and then which means D. That's like that's basically your analysis, or your so there's the experiment, then there's the results, then there's the like the implications of the results, and that's the meaning, and that's always made up by the mind, made up by individual humans. And you could get that same result, and two different humans will think that it means different things. You understand? So, and in a sense, when I'm saying I am myself, the truth is true, literally what I'm saying is A is equal to A, or 1 is equal to 1. And like the mind just can't compute that. So it's like, oh, 1 is equal to 1. Like, what can I derive from that? What can I conclude about that? You can't conclude anything at all. And that's not like a mistake. That doesn't mean it's wrong or invalid. You can't conclude anything at all, but it's still, that's the absolute truth. That's the bedrock. So in a sense, the whole thing what I'm speaking about here is like, as well, because the absolute is absolute, right? Like, it's eternal. It's not in time. Like, because time and space, all these things are already like relative splits and forms. So it's in eternity. It's like, it's eternal. It's eternal truth. The truth is true eternally. Like, it's never not true, because there's no opposite to it. It's absolute. It's eternal, right? And as I've explained in my past videos, God doesn't have to create everything, because everything already is in eternity. So he just remembers, so to speak. So the problem is, I could tell you black is black. You would agree with that. A human is human. I am myself. You would agree with that. But what I'm like, see, I don't even mean anything when I'm saying that. But see, what you think I mean when I'm saying that is already like not what I mean, because I don't mean anything. So that's why I said self-realization is a full stop. Like, so to the mind, when I say I am myself, or the truth is true, it's like I didn't say anything at all. It's like, what? You might have not said anything. You might have just put a full stop. You might as well have just put a full stop. And yes, I might as well have, because a full stop is actually more of a close of an indicator. Just full stop. Not even a sentence. Full stop. That's the absolute truth. But this whole point that I'm leading towards is that because it's eternal and it's infinite, everything is absolute, everything already is itself. Nothing needs to be created. See, we're so conditioned, because we're operating from the human plane, which is in the relative plane, and there's everything is opposites. Human means, like, if I'm a human, that means I'm not this. I'm like not a car. I'm not a dog. See, I you know what I'm saying? I'm not like whatever. Like, I'm alive, which is opposite to dead. I exist, which is opposite to non-existence, so on and so forth. So everything you know is by opposites and by contrast. You can't really like know, like, you can't even, like, for example, like if you was born, like if a child was born in a very hot country, and let's say it's always 40 degrees Celsius minimum, it never goes below that. They've never had a cold shower. They've never had cold water. You'd think that child knows what heat is, but actually they wouldn't even know what heat is. To them, that heat would be the equilibrium. That would just be normal. So they would only know what cold, like they would only really even know what, even if they was born in that insanely hot country, they would only know what heat actually is when went to a country that's colder, or when they took an ice bath, experienced coldness, the contrast, then they'll like go back to the heat of that's heat, that's hot, like in comparison to this. Do you get what I'm saying? So you only know by comparison, by contrast. Like your brain, like generally can't derive any meaning or anything if there's no contrast. Your brain can't do it. That's what I'm saying. Like when I say it's impossible to grasp or understand the absolute, I'm not like trying to like speak down on you or something like. It's actually impossible to understand it. You can only realize it. You can only embody it and like dissolve into it. You can only become it. You have to embody it. You have to realize it. You can't like fucking understand it, like as a mental concept. No. So yeah, but the point, as I said, because it's an eternity and everything already is completely acausal. But what I was explaining there is because we're in the relative plane, we're used to like speaking as humans and learning everything through opposites. And in this relative plane, as I said, because nothing is absolute, and it's all relative, but because it's all being split from the absolute and it's all like a house of cards, as I said, it all reinforces each other. Like you need hot to have cold. You need life to have death. You need pain to have pleasure. All of these things. So it all reinforces each other. You can't have one without the other. And in the relative plane, everything that there is, like, was caused. Like nothing happens that wasn't caused. Like these sound vibration that you're hearing was caused by this human body speaking, which was caused by this human body thinking, by this human body planning. You know what I'm saying? And so on, so, and then caused back. So there's always an infinite causation back in the past. So it's kind of like a domino effect. One thing causes another, which causes another, which causes another, which causes another. That's basically like the law of causality. They say that's one of the 12 like rules of the 12 rules of the universe, like the laws of causality. And in a sense, that's true, like within the dream still. I basically say, when I say the dream, I'm just saying everything in the relative plane. I'm not saying it's really false, but as I say, and what the appearances are not what they appear to be. And even though they're relatively true, they're not absolutely true. And yeah, so everything you've learned, like your brain is basically so conditioned in like linear time, linearity. Like if you basically subscribe to linearity, like if you subscribe to time and space and matter, like that's your like in the ground axioms and assumptions of your whole mental construct. Because remember how I said everything in the relative plane is built in these kind of hierarchies, in these forms. Like all the forms are in hierarchies, bottom up. And like you have to build a foundation, then build something else on top of that, and build on top of that. And the foundation are all the axioms and assumptions and so on. And then you have to build on top of that. And then I remember I explained if any of your axioms or assumptions are wrong, then your whole like structure will collapse and is wrong. It may sustain itself for a while, for a few years, a few months, but then eventually it will collapse as time goes on. As I said, because time is the unfoldment of truth. But yeah, so you're so conditioned in linear time that everything is caused by something else before that. Like nothing can happen without something else causing it. And when I tell you that the truth is true, like no one made it true, no one like created it to be true, or anything like that, like the brain just can't compute that. Like it's the classic problem. Like what created reality? It was the Big Bang, and then what caused that? And then see, it's always an infinite regress. And then let's say, the Big Bang created, but then, who created that? Then God created that. But then who created God? See what I'm saying? That problem. And then people, but then if like God can create itself, then you don't even need God as an explanation to like explain how the Big Bang like created itself. But see, that's what it seems like, but actually no, it's true. Generally, everything else was created by something else. Like within the dream, like something like this phone was created by humans. You know what I'm saying? Humans was created by other humans, and then you know what I'm saying, which was created by Earth, which was created like you know what I'm saying. So everything in this dream, like this video, was created by this human like construct. You know what I'm saying? Everything was caused by something else within the dream, within the world, right? Everything was caused. And is always caused by something other than it. So everything was created in a sense in the relative plane. So that's true. That's correct in the relative plane. But yes, that still doesn't mean that God couldn't create itself. Like, yes, God actually did create itself. And that's what separates God from everything else. So everything else was created by something other than itself. But God was the only thing that created itself. And in fact, people get this wrong as well. They think that God like created the universe back then. Like back in the past. And now we're here. Like, no. Like creation is happening in this instant. God is continuously, and your God, I'm not speaking about like some external God. Every time I'm speaking about God, I'm not speaking about a Christian God. I'm not speaking about an external God. I'm speaking really about God, which is just the absolute, which is the truth that is true always. Absolutely. The infinite eternal truth. That's God. Like the absolute, see, because God is not like within the dream. It's not in the the relative plane. The relative plane is in it. Do you understand? So like it's not subject to the laws of the relative plane. It's the one that's creating those laws. That's like subjugating the subjects, if you get what I'm saying. So it's not bound by causality. It's not bound by like the law of causality or like linearity. It's not bound by that. So nothing caused it. But this is what people like. This is why they will never understand the absolute, because they might agree, yes, the truth is true and I am myself. But then they're like, all right, cool. But what is the self? Like, how did I get here? Like, what made the truth true? Or what made reality real? But nothing made it real. It always was real. Don't you understand? That's what I'm saying. Reality was always real, eternally. There was never a time where reality wasn't real. There was never a time where falsehood wasn't false. So it's acausal. As I said, you're just so programmed. Everything in your life, you've been programmed and you've learned that is that everything must be caused by something else. Everything that exists must have been created by something else. But no, like God created itself. And as I said, it didn't create itself in the past. It's creating itself right now, this instant. Every single moment is creating. Like literally, what creation is an infinite self-perpetual like creation mechanism. Like what creation is its own self-creation. Creation is creating itself as we speak. Like me speaking, you listening, that's reality creating itself right here and now. If it wasn't continuously like creating itself, then it would just like cease to exist. Even though obviously, as I said, it's absolute, but the forms, all these forms that you see are relative. And they need to be constantly kind of created, if you know what I'm saying. Like, and if you watch my videos on like the consciousness of optical illusion and the nature of thoughts and how God constructs reality, why pain is inevitable and so on, then you'll understand, I've explained in those videos kind of the mechanics of how God is creating itself in this instant. And how it's not that, it came from back there. Because remember, we're in eternity right now. I'm not speaking about something behind the curtains. Like right here, right now, we're in eternity. We didn't come here from back then. Like this video is 28 minutes so far. Like you think, like I clicked on this video. I started watching back then 28 minutes ago. Like, no, you never clicked on the video. Like 28 minutes haven't passed. You're here right now. And like those 28 minutes, they didn't actually, like, they haven't passed. Like you didn't actually, like, there was no progression when you was here and now you've progressed to here and we're progressing here. No, like you're only here. It's the world which seems to revolve around you. That's why it really helps if you watch like certain fractal zooms and stuff, because that's literally it. It's like the 0 point, and then it's actually the world which revolves around you. It's like a treadmill almost. Like consciousness is like a shape-shifting treadmill where the world, like it makes it seem like you're progressing through. It makes it seem like the world is stagnant and you're progressing through it. But actually you're the central point and the world is moving and revolving around you, giving you the illusion of progression. It's like a treadmill, like a cosmic treadmill. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, acausality. That's one of the main reasons why people can't understand it, because they just think that everything that is true has to be caused. But the truth is uncaused. Like, because as I said, it's absolute. It's a loop self-reference. It is itself, which in a sense is just zero, because the loop is just zero. Loop zero. You know what I'm saying? So it's nothingness. I'm not even saying it's nothing. It's nothingness. Realize there's a difference between that. There's a difference between nothing and nothingness. Another thing why people won't be able to grasp or understand the absolute is its unconditionality. How it's unconditionally true. Always. No matter the condition. Because that's why I explained in my first few core videos, as I said, absolute and relative truths. Like, it is relatively true that, like, this phone exists. It's relatively true. Because, like, it exists, but it could not exist. And there will be a time where it won't exist. See, so it's relative to what point in time. Like, right now we're in 2024. And then, yeah, it may seem like a long time away, but really, like 3,500, like that, it seems like, so far away, we'll never get to 3,500. Obviously, we as humans will all be dead by then. But it seems, 3,500, so far in the future, we'll never get there. Actually, no, like, we're basically already there. You know what I'm saying? Like, there will be a time where it's going to be 3,500. Well, we don't even need to go that far into the future. Probably in 100 years, maybe in 10 years, this is going to be broken or something, thrown into scrap. And then basically what we say non-existence is, or death. Like, we say humans or biological, like, creatures, only humans which are alive can die. I've already explained to you that there's no such thing as life and death. But, like, not only humans can die, any form lives and dies. Like, life is just arising and death is just dissolution, if you get what I'm saying. So even this phone will die. And because, as I said, everything in this relative plane is change, is constantly changing. And in a sense, what, as I said, time is the unfoldment of truth. And because really in truth, this doesn't exist. Really, it never existed. But right now, this is just, it arose right now, like this is at the peak of its appearance. And then it's going to fall back to to non-existence, which was its original state. Like, and death, like, it's going to basically die. Because death, all it is like, as I said, everything is changing. And then, like, let's say it started from here and then it's changing incrementally. And it gets to a point to where it changes so much to where, like, what it is now is still the same thing, but what it is now is so recognizable from its original form that you could say, like, that form, like the phone, is dead. See, because these materials, energy can't be created. That's why I explained energy, the zero-sum game. Energy is nothing. It's just the oscillation of nothing. Into credit, into debt, doesn't matter. So it can amalgamate and oscillate into all these forms. But then obviously, you see, as it arises into credit, it has to bounce back to a period of debt. And then when it's in debt, it could be there for a while and then it has to bounce back to credit. So that's the same with life and death. That's the cycle of life and death, the wheel of samsara. And that's not just for biological humans or anything, it's for all forms. Like, this piece of paper, like, this is here now, but like before, 10 years ago, it wasn't here. And then if I burn it, if I throw it in the trash and then, I'm saying, it gets burnt on compressor and something, it'll get turned into something completely new. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like, before this was a tree. Can you believe that this was a tree before? You see, so forms just change. They just transform. And then, like, you see that, now we say that tree is dead. But it's not dead, it's here. It's just a different form now. You know what I'm saying? So literally, even the human body, like, you think you're alive now, and you think, like, when you stop breathing, you're going to be dead. But you're not going to be dead. You're going to be in the ground and merge back into the earth again. If you get buried, or, you know, you get the whole point. Then the maggots are going to be eating you. Then you're going to turn into maggots. You will be a maggot. Obviously, I'm just over-exaggerating a little bit here, but, like, you basically get the point. So the whole reason why I went onto that is that, see, this is relatively true, but it's basically, when I'm saying it's relatively true, it's also conditionally true. See, it's true if, like, the conditions are filled. Like, as long as the atoms and these materials stay in this arrangement, then that's filling the conditions and it's still, like, alive, basically. It's still this. But then when we take away the conditions, we, like, break this and, like, change the form of the atoms and we change, like, the thing. So it's not no longer like filling the conditions of, like, what it means to be a phone. Then it no longer will be a phone. So it's like, it's true, but it's only conditionally true. Like, I'm a human, that's true, but it's only conditionally true. As like, I still need to be breathing, I still need to be looking like this, I still need to be able to so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying? But if I died 100 years ago and now like I've dissolved into the earth and all this stuff, like, where are you gonna point to and say like that's him? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's conditional truth, but the absolute, as I said, is formless and it's absolute. So there's no opposite and it's completely unconditional. So whether this phone exists, like this phone is a conditional truth. Whether this phone exists as a phone or doesn't exist as a phone, the absolute is still absolute and the truth is still true. Whether this paper exists conditionally or whether it doesn't exist conditionally, the absolute is still absolute and the truth is still true. Whether I exist as a human or you exist as a human or we both don't exist, we're both alive or we're both dead, the absolute will still be absolute and the truth will still be true. You see, so it's completely unconditional. There's no conditions that could debunk it. And the mind, as I said, like with all your conditions on the 3D plane, where like we live in linearity and causation and all these things, that's where conditionality is paramount. Like there needs to be conditions. Like we can create fire, but the conditions have to be right. It can't be fucking raining. You can't like create a fire with wet low. So everything is conditional. You can get paid, but you have to go to your job on time. You have to do the job correct. That's the conditions. That's why I say it's impossible for humans to love unconditionally. Even your parents, no, your parents don't love you unconditionally. There's this idea that, like some men will try to say, men love unconditionally, women only love conditionally. I hear what they're trying to say, but no, that's wrong. But then some people say, women can't love us, but only our mothers love us unconditionally. No, even your mum does not love you unconditionally. She loves you like the closest to unconditional that you could ever experience. You could say. I'm sure there's people who've married a woman or like who are with a woman, they have a life partner who loves them more unconditionally than their mother did. So that's not some absolute truth that all mothers love unconditionally. That's stupid. But yeah, see, all love in the human plane, relative plane, is conditional. But yeah, so because everything we know is conditional, because everything we know is causal. The mind, as I said, I'm not saying you're stupid because you won't understand and I understand. No, even my mind doesn't understand. It might sound like I understand, and yes, like I understand like enough to kind of explain, but like you can't really understand the absolute. You just have to realize it and become it and embody it. So acausality, that's one reason why it's impossible for the mind to grasp or understand the absolute. Unconditionality, that's another reason why. I've already been like explaining a lot about contrast and how there's no contrast for comparison. Because the absolute is absolute, there's only one of it. So it's non-dual, of course, it's non-duality. And see, like non-duality transcends logic, it transcends linearity, it transcends causation. Because even logic, logic is like kind of deductions as well. Like that's also meaning. Like you say, like 1 + 1 is equal to 2. That's logical. But then 1 + 1 is equal to 3. That's illogical. Like, see, because it's already like a linear, like you're saying 1 + 1 equals, see, that's already going through time. That's already linearity. So you're like, each stage has to like make sense with the last and so on. Like, but non-duality, there's not even like 1 + 1. It's only 1. So if I just say 1, or like, you know what I'm saying, 1 is equal to 1, or just 1. Like, what can you infer about that? What can you derive about that? Like, 1, which means like 5, or which means 2, or which means good, or which means bad, or which means correct, or which means false. Like, no, you can't say anything. Like 1. That's all I'm giving you. If I say 1 + 1, then you could say, that means it's 2, or that's equal to 2. Or if I say 1 + 1 is equal to 3, you say, that means you're stupid. or 1 + 1 is equal to 2. And you say, yeah, like, well, I think on the last one I just said 1 + 1 is equal to 3. That means you're stupid. And then, 1 + 1 is 2. That means you're correct. See, because there's 1, and then there's plus, and then there's 1, and then there's equals, and then there's 2. See, there's multiple. That's already like 4 units. that your mind can like create the contrast and say, oh yeah, like add it all together and then say that means that. And then, you know what I'm saying? But like if you just say one, or you just say truth is truth, full stop. What am I supposed to do with that? How does that help me? Like, what does that even mean? Is that, see, the mind just can't get it because the mind needs two. That's why it needs contrast. It needs two already to create like because understanding is like creating a web. See, like, I'm gonna explain this here. Yeah, I drew this little analogy. Yeah, like understanding, right? Like you've heard, connecting the dots. Like, once I really started connecting the dots, that's when I understood. You see, so understanding is like connecting the dots, right? And like you could say, for example, this is like full understanding where you've connected all the dots. There was all the different dots. You connected it all together and your mind created this web of understanding where it can create this kind of context which explains the content, and it can use this point to reference against that, to reference against that, to, you know what I'm saying, create this web of understanding. And then this is like understanding, but incomplete understanding. See, obviously it's not exactly the same amount of points, but you could imagine this is the same amount of points as this. And then obviously I'm not saying that this is the absolute, but let's just say this is like a concept, like, what a human is or what a phone is or something, right? And that's complete understanding of what a phone is. Like you ask like some Apple, like tech guy or something like that, like just in the relative plane, just speaking like what a phone is, like he understands that more than me. He'll say, and then you have to put this chip in the motherboard here and then use this thing. And you know what I'm saying? Like complete understanding basically. And then that's someone else who basically knows what a phone is, but they haven't connected all the dots. So they don't fully understand what a phone, they know enough to use it, but they don't really know what a phone is. See? So they haven't connected all the dots. And the more dots you connect, the more you understand. So that's basically understanding, like as an analogy. But then you see how, look, you need multiple dots to even create connections and webs to create like a network and to be able to create the context to understand the content. But then imagine like essentially what I'm saying, when I'm saying 1 is equal to 1, that's basically literally just one dot, full stop. As I said in my past video, self-realization is the end of progression. It's a full stop. Full stop. It's just a point. Like, how can you understand that? There's not even 2 dots to draw a connection and say, yes, like good is linked to bad. Or like, or you know what I'm saying? This and this, therefore that. Like, no, it's just only one point. So how could you even draw any webs or connections? You can't. And in a sense, the only way you can do it through the infinity symbol, where you oscillate into right, into the credit, then you oscillate into debt. You know what I'm saying? You oscillate into goodness, you oscillate into evil. You oscillate into right, you oscillate into wrong, and then you kind of contrast back. You just have to loop back, and that's the infinity symbol. That's the only kind of way you can create like the context, but really you can't. See, and you can only do that once you've kind of already become it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. And really, the way like your whole ego is like, this is basically what you are, right? That point. Wait, I need to go onto a new page for this. Like, let's just say, that point is you, I, the universal I. I call myself I, you call yourself I. That I, there's not 2 different I's. There's only one I, the universal I. That's I, me, I, self, the absolute self. I am myself. That's the true you, right? And then how the kind of ego works is the same with the phone. How I said you basically have all those connected like that connected web of all the things that are not the phone, which you can use to reference and create context for what the phone is. And there's even one video you should really watch. It is reality is a strange loop, or you are a strange loop. You should watch that because there's even one bit in there where it kind of explains how the identity, and it has like the I in the center and it creates this web. I'm going to kind of draw it for you here. So that's really the true you, the core. That's everyone has the same core. And then you kind of create like one kind of boundary around that, and then you might say, all right, cool. And then there's your name, whatever your name is. My name's Nathaniel. And then like how your body looks, you'll have an image in your head of how you look. and then it'll say like, oh, like where you are, so on and so forth, right? See, so and then like when you ask someone who they are, they'll usually tell you their name, or like they'll point to and say, oh, like, I'm me, like my body. See, really you're this, but then their mind can't, because your mind, as I said, it can't go to the point, so it has to always like go to a thing. So it's kind of, oh, this pen is running out. One sec. See, so, and then you'll say, oh yeah, like there's I, and then you'll say, oh, like I am Nathaniel, or your name, and then like you might say your age, 25, like where you are, like where you live, like an image of yourself in your head. You know what I'm saying? And then like, oh, male. And then like you'll kind of like create this web around you of things that are not the I, but that you can use as a reference or as a symbol to point back at I. So you'll say, oh, Nathaniel, that's I. Like I'm Nathaniel, or I'm a man, or I'm a human. You see what I'm saying? And then each of these like things like spreads out to other things. You know what I'm saying? And then that's kind of why I explained in my part 2 of Absolute Truth of how it starts from one, like, and then it kind of stems out like one, that there's a stem, the absolute core truth, which splits into 2. The first relative split of relative, false, and true, and then that splits into 2, and then that splits into 2, and how it splits out like in a tree, almost like discharge, and an electrical discharge, or kind of almost like a tree, how it has a tree trunk, and then it spreads to the branches, and then to the twigs, and then so on and so forth. And then that's the same like even with your brain and your neurons. Like, if you actually look at a brain, that's how it works. It has like the core stem, and then it splits, and then those splits make splits, and then the dendrites and the myelin, whatever that fucking word is, myelination, or whatever the fuck. You get what I'm saying. It doesn't really matter. Minutia. And like those split up, and then literally, because remember I told you everything is created by divisions and boundaries, and so essentially your brain is like every single time you learn something, you're creating a new distinction. Oh, this, not that. And then the more like refined your intelligence, the more like nuanced and refined those little distinctions are. First, they're going to be very gross and obvious. That's like in the most gross level, as I said, at the bottom of like kind of the hierarchy. Everyone's at the bottom. Everyone like realizes the gross, stark things. Like, you don't need to be a genius to, like, if I slap you in the face, you don't need to be a genius to know that hurts. But then if I explain this video to you, or I show you some quantum mechanics equation, or so on and so forth, like 99% of the people aren't going to understand. You know what I'm saying? So because it's very subtle, very nuanced. See, and what that kind of means is like on the lowest levels, people are very like extreme. They think it's only this way or only that way. That's how they kind of manipulate people with religions, obvious things that are like Christianity or Muslim. Either one, only one of them's true. Or religion or atheism. Only one of them's true. And one of them has to absolutely be true, and one's absolutely false, when in fact they're both relatively wrong. You know what I'm saying? And then like the right wing or the left wing. And then people on the right think that the right's absolutely true, and I think people on the left think the left's come on, man. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so like in the Stark levels, yeah, like they'll say, either it's good or it's bad. But then the more nuanced it gets is like, you can say, like, it'll start being more and more conditional, and it'll be like, all right, cool. Yes, this is good in some sense, but then it's bad in some sense. All right, cool. That's one level up. And then you might say, this is good in that sense, but even though it's good in that, still it's bad this way. And even though it's bad, nevertheless, still this. See, whereas like someone on the lower levels, they would say, it's good, therefore it's good, or it's good, but it's also bad in this thing, so you can't say it's really good, or it's good, but then it's bad, but then it's still good in this situation, but then they still won't, like, see, there's always more nuanced steps, and it always gets more and more refined. That, like, someone on the lower dense level, like, when they're dense, they're not going to be able to make those very nuanced, like, nuanced like deductions, if you get what I'm saying. And the more nuanced it is, like it's more like, oh, you'll say this, even though this, therefore, even though this, there's still this. Like this thing is like this. Yes, it's true. However, that doesn't negate this. Like, see, someone might recognize like, oh, this thing is like this. It doesn't really matter like the details. I can't really think of an example right now, but like this is like this. And then a dense person said, oh, this is this, which means it's just completely wrong or something like that. Whereas like someone a little bit more refined, this is this. And yes, it appears to be wrong, but it can still be good in this situation. Like you don't really need to be that high level to understand that. But then you could understand, this is bad this way, but it's still good in this situation. But nevertheless, it shouldn't be used like that, like in that situation. But yeah, so and it basically it's more like, this, even though this is this, still is still this, and this is never the like. It's basically it's very more refined. It's very more refined and yeah, because obviously the whole relative plane is relative. So it's like the more you understand that there's no absolute truths in the relative plane, then the more you can realize like how refined it is and how like everything is kind of both things at once. But anyway, I kind of got sidetracked there because I was just explaining the root core and then how it splits and then splits and then splits. Like discharge or like trees and and the branches and your core stem, brain and so on. And it's the same with this web that I was just kind of drawing originally. So that's the core, the absolute, which everyone has. And then they have like, like their name, where they live and so on, which they use as thing. And then all of those, like for example, like 25 years old, you might have like a connotation of that are still young and healthy. And then that connotation might say something like, which means you should be active. Which means then that connotation could link on something else, which means you're productive. You know what I'm saying? And then England could mean, England, shit weather. And then because of shit weather, that means you're depressed. Or, you know, like obviously it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, but then, you know what I'm saying? Basically, what I'm saying is that all of these things keep splitting themselves. And then instead, you basically, what your ego is like this infinite web of so many things. And the more, like, as time goes on, like first when you're 1 year old, you just have like 5 split. And then like, the more you go on, the more experiences, then it keeps on refining and creating more like splits. And then you start like, that's what it means like to create character and so on. But then see, even all of this, that's like just the first level. Like that's just the first level. And then like it will expand more, then there'll be something else out there. And then like that thing will expand out there. And then basically it'll be a complete web, like just like a spider web, if you get what I'm saying. And even a spider web, that's like a perfect like analogy. Just look at a spider web and that's basically how your mind like constructs it. And it's always around the core, which is the eye. But really, all the other things are excess. They're all actually wrong. You're not Nathaniel. You're not your word. You're not what this and that. It's only the eye that's true. But like the mind can't even grasp what that is without the other things. If you get what I'm saying, because the mind, as I said, is limited, is in opposite in nature, and it's always incomplete. The mind can never be like complete. It's impossible. Because then that's just the mind of God. If you get what I'm saying, that's just if the mind is complete, then you're conscious of like literally everything. And nothing at the same time, and then you're just conscious of nothing. So you can't experience life as a human, like with a complete mind. Like mind, just as it, like just nothing in the relative plane is unlimited. Everything is limited. Only the unlimited is unlimited. But yeah, so yeah, as I said, it's non-dual, so it transcends logic, linearity and all that, because there's no contrast. So you can't like use logic or linearity or causation without contrast. And even language, like to understand something, you need language. Like you need to be able to think using language. And you could still say, but people can understand things without language. Like you could do something with a dog. Like you could go like this and then they will understand you're telling it off, even without language. But that's communication. So really, language is just a form or a tool of communication. But to understand, you need communication. self-communication, really, because you're communicating to yourself. Like, even if you're thinking to yourself, you're communicating to yourself. And to understand, you need communication. And right now, we use language to do that. But even without language, but even still, any kind of communication still needs a split. Because, like, for example, if I'm communicating to you good, there has to basically be, like, bad as well. Like, for that to mean anything, there has to already be, like, the two opposites again. Or language, if I say, oh, it's true or it's false, like, you see how, because in non-duality, there's not even language. Because look, like, if you just say, look, the word truth, like, you need T, you need R, you need U, you need T. Like, R is not T, R is not U is not T, T is not H. They're all different, and truth only comes together when you have those five together. But then, remember, I'm just saying only 1 point. So that, in a sense, is just T. Or it's just nothing, it's a point. So how could you even create a sentence and communicate to yourself what that is? You know what I'm saying? Could you understand anything if you couldn't communicate or think to yourself? You wouldn't even be able to, like, make any conclusions. So it's simple. But yeah, I think I'm gonna leave that one there as well. Made 2 episodes today, both 1 hour. So yeah, no, that's good. I'll leave that one there.